Socho, can you unmute and tell us if you can see the slideshow?
That's strategic.
I see it.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Woo! Hockey start. Thanks for your patience, everybody, and thanks for the help, Elizabeth and Irene and Brooke. So, as mentioned in our introduction, I and Brooke and Socho, who's online, are with the City of Tucson's Storm to Shade program. So this is a green stormwater infrastructure program that is housed in Tucson Water. So the Storm to Shade program is a program that was approved by Mayor and Council in 2018. So it was more or less an organic kind of next extension of a lot of rainwater harvesting and passive rainwater collection policies for water conservation that the city has slowly adopted over about the past 20 years. It was created with two mandates. So the first mandate is that we build new GSI throughout the 6 wards of the city. The second mandate is that we maintain existing GSI, not all of it, but select GSI and any new GSI that we build. So just to, I'm probably speaking to the choir here, singing to the choir, but just to remind us the benefits of GSI. This image is of Scott Avenue, which I'm sure most of you have strolled down at some point or another. It's like the back west side of where the Tucson Museum of Art is. And it's a beautiful, shady, extremely green and vegetated corridor that is quite pleasant. So it kind of encompasses all of these various benefits that GSI provides us. So GSI landscape reduces demand on the potable water system for irrigation for plants. It improves surface water quality by acting as a filtration system that pulls out pollutants and helps break them down before they reach our groundwater supply. Obviously, vegetation, trees, tree canopies, shades, and cools the urban environment, which mitigates urban heat island effect, which is going to only become more and more of a challenge, I think, as we live in Tucson and it gets hotter and hotter. Vegetation and healthy soil sequesters carbon, which is helpful for our air quality. It extends the life of gray stormwater infrastructure by pulling a little bit of that total volume of water into these assets rather than sending it all into gray infrastructure. And it has the effect of mitigating minor flooding. I want to make very clear, especially to this crowd, that we are not here saying that we are going to alleviate flooding. We are not a flood control program, but we can strategically place our GSI assets so that we can help mitigate some of those minor flooding events that tend to impact neighborhoods and communities. So the way that we work is, if you live in the city of Tucson and you pay a Tucson water utility bill, and you look carefully at it, you'll see a couple of additional little fees that have nothing to do with your water consumption. One of them is the conservation fee. Another one is the GSI fee. So everyone who lives within the city pays into that fee, and it is 13 cents per CCF on water consumption. So it's quite minimal. It averages out to be about $1 per month per household. And it goes into a big pot that's divided equally across the 6 wards of the city, and then with an equal allocation for the mayor's office as well, to use at their discretion to amplify projects around the city. The way that we are targeting our projects is to first see where there are opportunities to leverage funding. So we're looking very closely at existing city improvement projects. Those are specifically the 407 Parks and Connections Bond improvements. What we're able to do is say, hey, you are parks, we're investing $4 million in this park. Maybe there's the potential to capture stormwater off of an adjacent hardscape, to bring it into that park landscape and create a native vegetated space that will add benefits to this park and also reduce the need for irrigated turf that may or may not be serving any wonderful functions. So we're doing a lot of work with parks and with the Department of Transportation Mobility in the connections projects. So those are the bike boulevards and the greenways specifically. We're also working closely with the Mayor's Million Trees initiatives and Nicole Gillette, who is the city's urban forestry program manager, because everywhere that we're able to add trees is amplifying those initiatives as well. And then we are also working with Pima County Regional Flood Control District as they have begun to invest within the city limits in building facilities, basins, flood control basins. And so there was an IGA that was established between the city and the county about the maintenance of those facilities. And we were involved in conversations about the long-term maintenance of those facilities. And so we're working together in that regard as well. And then another way that we really target our investment is based on an equity framework. So we have a map called the GIS or GSI planning tool, which looks at a measure that's called the tree equity score. Has anybody in this room heard of tree equity score? Just curious. I know that Irene has. So tree equity score is a mashup of GIS data layers that include tree canopy, heat vulnerability, flood vulnerability, and then socioeconomic demographic factors to identify which are those areas of town that are hottest, have the lowest tree canopy, have minor flooding issues, and also have people living in those areas who are most likely not to have air conditioning at their houses or be able to pay an expensive bill, might have health issues, might rely more on public transportation, walking or biking to get where they need to go. And so this is how we're targeting our investment. We're looking at those spots within each of the 6 wards to see what we can do there. And then we work very closely with the ward offices because they have a lot of information from working very closely with communities on the ground about where things are needed. Where do they need more green space? Where do they need more shade? Where do they need more just beautification? And so we are constantly checking in with them to move projects forward, redirect, adjust as needed. And pass the Brooke.
Okay, we'll try and cover this pretty quickly here. I know you guys have a lot of information to cover today, but the second piece of our the Storm Shade program is the maintenance program, which is maintaining those upwards of 200 or so assets that have been built throughout the community over the past 20 or so years, in addition to the new ones that are being built. And our program's been staffed up for since January of 2020, and I was brought on in December. But before that time, the program was building the bedrock of the maintenance program, which is really designed to address how to pull maintenance of these assets that are oftentimes located on streets or in parks, where there's maintenance staff who've been caring for them up to this point, kind of under one unified maintenance program, and to use, where possible, some of those GSI funds to actually maintain them. So pulling off some of the additional capacity and financial structures that may have been on other departments who have been managing these assets for the past 20 or so years. So over the past year and a half or so, a number of activities that have already been taken. One was to pull together a lot of the experts who had been working and building those GSI assets over the past 20 years, and researchers from U of A to really get on the same page about what is the state of GSI, how do we properly maintain them, what are some of the gaps in us kind of unifying all these efforts. And that led to a series of trainings, both a smartscape training where landscapers or anyone could go to gain this training, and then also trainings within other departmental staff. So Blue leads a lot of those with DTM staff, with park staff, etc. And also we're in the process of writing a maintenance manual, so like a handheld, like a flip book that can be in every truck, and kind of like the guidepost for all these, how do you properly maintain these specific features. And then also, since we are working across departments, we have individual memorandums of understanding that a number of you guys have been involved in between the Storm to Shade program and DTM, as well as a separate one with parks, also with Tucson Water for the well sites and whatnot. So we're working on developing agreements. So it's really clear, how do we work together in these different places where the GSI is located. Also working on our asset management system and kind of figuring out how like Cartograph and others in the new Tucson Water Infor asset management system can, where there's crossover or work maybe that's been done from one asset management program into the other. So we're trying to figure out those pathways on how they can talk to each other. And then finally, we are hiring a GSI workforce, so contractors using that GSI fund to actually perform the work on these priority GSI sites. So between these things, we're really hoping it can kind of reduce some of the bottlenecks to actually getting these important systems maintained over time. Yes, Elizabeth.
I know that Parks and Rec is working on a GIS project, and that'll identify locations of their storm drain system on their park sites to help them with maintenance for stormwater management. So I know Jennifer Pasillas was working on that.
Yeah, she recently reached out to us after the LID work group meeting the other day, just to kind of say, hey, this is another area you might want to take a look at. So do you want to say anything about that?
Oh, good.
Yeah. So
Great.
very good. So that's all we had today. Just kind of little, it's a lot, but hopefully that was the level of detail you were looking for today, and happy to dig in or participate any further today, but thanks.
Anyone have any questions?
I'm gonna not touch any of that. I'm gonna walk away.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you. We're just gonna see if we can get back to you.
If you hit X in that little window,
It'll go away.
that definitely, yeah. Try that one. And then if you hit the X down in the Teams window, you'll stop sharing this screen.
Yeah, a little next to the leave button, it says share. Stop sharing.
Oh, I don't want to leave.
Oh, no, but next to it,
Oh.
there's a little X on the share button that'll stop you from sharing our.
There we go. Yeah, and then. There we go. Okay, there we go. Then- Oh, there you go, Elizabeth, your Word document down at the bottom. Is that it? Yeah, okay.
So we're now going to move into identifying items that need prioritization and adding any action items to the floodplain management plan. Those of you that are online, you can go to the City of Tucson Floodplain Administration website, follow along under our floodplain management plan. And on page 53, we'll go ahead and start through the action items. We're gonna kind of jump ahead, but let's go ahead and get down to these here. And for those of you in the room, you have a 11 by 17 copy of this. So the City Floodplain Administration has gone through all these items and essentially found all of them to be active or almost completed on some of these different action items. I'm gonna go ahead and share the PowerPoint because that'll help us look at the highlights of those action items. come in more. Gonna go ahead and open that spreadsheet for you to take a look at, this PowerPoint. Bear with us, please. Yes. See, where did we put it?
While you guys are waiting, do you know that it's not on the website?
Okay, so if you go to the city of Tucson under engineering, in transportation department website under engineering, floodplain administration. And there's 2 links to it, and I think the first one was not linking up correctly. And so if you look at this, the one here under flood and erosion hazard information, that second line item, 2020 floodplain management plan. This link here is going to give you what we are looking at right now.
Can you put the link in the chat?
Yes, I'm hoping that this link will work because I was using the link before and I was having problems. That's why I was directing people to that. Okay. Use the other chat. Check that one out. And I'll put in this other chat. I know sometimes some things are seen. Let's see, what do we do? All the way to the end. Wheel. Anybody got ideas on this? I don't know why.
Probably if you go up to display settings. And then swap.
Oh, yes, swap is under you. Right out, yeah.
Oh, yay, thank you.
That's great.
So, the city of Tucson, we're in the second portion of our meeting still. That's the Tucson Floodplain Management Plan annual update. Those earlier photos are from A Mountain. So we're gonna review our updates right now, to our goals, etc. So the floodplain management plan action items are on that the spreadsheet, that 11 by 17 that you have in front of you. The highlights, instead of going through every one of these, we went ahead and highlighted some of the items. The city of Tucson has adopted a revision to the floodplain ordinance. And we also updated our 5-year floodplain management plan update. This is also the Tucson Stormwater Management System Study, Phase 5A The TSMS actually was adopted years ago, so this is an update to that earlier management plan. That we call it the Floodplain Management Plan now because FEMA likes to see things so that they can recognize them for CRS credits. And we also have updated our, let's see, we talked about the Floodplain Ordinance and the Floodplain Management Plan. Talk about the ordinance here. We have revisions to that Floodplain Ordinance, that's Chapter 26, and it's for the critical facility regulations. It more clarifies the requirements to match FEMA requirements or NFIP as a participating NFIP community. We also have increased our standards. We have higher standards on the regional water course for erosion hazard setbacks. Looks like part of the slide got cut off. Wash maintenance training. Oh, that might be on the next page. Yeah, wash maintenance training is being scheduled for June 2022. That's a floodplain management code as well as stormwater ordinance code maintenance training for the transportation maintenance crew. We work on complaint mapping. Oops, sorry, that was. There we are. So we're working with our IT group. We're looking at drainage complaints and how they can help us with new drainage studies. Although this data has been used in the past, we're improving those GIS tools as a resource for floodplain management. It helps us identify and analyze these areas for erosion and flood issues, and helps the LID implementation. We also are holding our second annual City of Tucson flood insurance meetings. Last year, the City of Tucson invited Pima County Regional Flood Control District, Marana, and also the state of Arizona, the insurance office. And we talked about flood risk and gave people information. There's upcoming meetings. I highly recommend anybody that's interested in flood insurance and the upcoming changes to FEMA flood insurance that just came out. Congress has changed the insurance premium requirements, and I highly recommend people attending one of the two outreach events, May 17th or May 25th. You'll see the outreach information and links to those meetings on the City of Tucson Floodplain Administration website. We've also sent over 400 letters out to what we call repetitive loss property areas. This map is not a repetitive loss area, just so people know. And we have 6 repetitive loss areas in the City of Tucson. This is a very low number compared to other communities in the NFIP program. That's good news for the city. We do try to do outreach and meet with some of these owners to help them reduce flooding. We do also have upcoming outreach for Juneteenth and what we had, I'm sorry, this is about what we've accomplished. So last year we provided Juneteenth with outreach materials. This year, June 17th, the City of Tucson Stormwater Management will be attending the Juneteenth outreach to give stormwater information out. And we're hoping Tucson Water, Storm to Shade will attend with us maybe. We also regularly help Tucson Association of Realtors with floodplain information and updates and presentations. We've also have, to most of us that have driven down here today, may have seen the downtown links road improvements in the downtown area. This includes a substantial number of storm drain improvements, crossing Stone Avenue and running through the Tucson Arroyo system. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. El Rio Gulf Detention Basin, that has been completed with the assistance of the Pima County Regional Flood Control District, who provide us with a detention basin to lower flooding risks for the downstream portions. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this floodplain is comes into the golf course. This FEMA floodplain heads north through the golf course, and there was a detention system that was installed that slows down the water, and this water continues through this neighborhood. We anticipate that the detention system is reducing the flood risk in these areas here. Cushing Street Bridge levee extension. This project went into a feasibility study with the assistance of FEMA Region 9. City of Tucson obtained a 2-year FEMA grant that is being completed as we speak. We're in the final draft stage. This Cushing Street Bridge levee is assessing flood protection to the adjacent Ramada Hotel and the critical facility, which is the electric substation servicing the downtown area. With the completion of this feasibility study, we'll be assessing whether or not to move forward with the construction of a levee extension to wrap around the substation and help protect it against flooding. We also had, with this same grant, another feasibility study for Christmas Wash. This is in the downstream area of Winter Haven, where we have an existing FEMA flood zone. We are anticipating trying to reduce that high-risk FEMA flood zone that runs through the Winter Haven area and then all the way down to the Rito. The neighborhood association in that area has contributed to the green infrastructure concepts for that feasibility study. The Houghton roadway widening project that just got completed. Lance, did you want to talk about that one, or we just had
We just had the ribbon cutting last Friday for that project, so.
and that's between what segment? Was it north of Valencia?
Valencia to Marianne Cleveland Way.
So that one is completed under there's more to this 11 by 17 list. We're including another portion above that in the report on page 50, 51, 52, somewhere in there of the report in that link. The City of Tucson contributed to the Pima County Interjurisdictional Multi-Hazard Plan 5-year update. And a bridge inventory update is occurring right now. Lance, did you want to talk about the bridge inventory? What you're doing with that?
Well, like you said, the bridge inventory is being updated with the new structures. Downtown Links, I think, is building 3 new bridges for culvert systems. Anything over 20 foot span is in that inventory. So we added the new Houghton Road bridge over the railroad, previous project to this Houghton Road that just finished up last Friday. And the Downtown Links one is ongoing, but there's 3 structures there that we'll be adding to the inventory. And then 22nd Street Bridge, that's going to be replaced, so not really floodplain, but.
We're also, thanks Lance. We're combining this stormwater, this meeting is to combine both the floodplain management plan meeting as well as the stormwater workshop due to overlapping topics. So that's why we're kind of combining efforts in this meeting. So it's kind of a new meeting for us at the city. So that's the floodplain management plan from December 8th to 2020. That was an update to the 2016 floodplain management plan, which was an update to the TSMS series of floodplain management for the city of Tucson adopted by Mayor and Council. One of the items in our floodplain ordinance was to identify how regional water courses are assessed for erosion and setbacks. This update clarifies that for the regional water courses, and I believe it's just the top three, Rito, Pantano, and the Santa Cruz. The only erosion and setback that is allowed to be used is that in the table in the ordinance. So they cannot submit a report saying, we want something different because of whatever reason. They actually have to go through a variance process in order to get anything different from that erosion and setback in that table.
Elizabeth, and who's on that committee who looks at the variances?
So that's a good point. During the variance that we got recently for this particular item, we had our Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee, and Linda and John. Who else, John, was on there? Jennifer Dwan. Dr. Dwan from the university.
Right, and Stephanie Thrush from EEC, and I think there's one other.
Yeah, so we had the Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee that convened to go over this particular request. We did have one request already since the adoption. And so that was what's going on. Of course, if you have a water course that is can be proved to show that it is 100-year protected, like say the FEMA floodplain shows it's contained and there's bank protection, well then you don't have to do an erosion and setback. That defaults to the 50 feet. So how this helps us is if there's areas where there's a 50-year storm contained by bank protection, or if there's no bank protection and people try to say, oh, it's good, it's no problem. No, we want them to go through the variance process or use the table setbacks. For the Tucson Floodplain Management Plan update, we identified the following 5 items as our hot topics for our concerns for hazards. Water course maintenance, repairing floodplain and or tree canopy, floodplain and erosion hazard management, sustainability, and homeless and water course post-fire risk. Today, we're concentrating on tree canopy and the homeless in the water course. FEMA administers the National Flood Insurance Program, and for our flood insurance meetings, I already said this, Golden Ranch also participated in our 2021 flood insurance meeting. There is a new meeting coming up, and I identified that you can look and attend the meeting virtually at the City of Tucson Floodplain Administration website. So We're kind of mixing again with some of our stormwater code and FEMA regulations, but the corrective action plan is something that the city of Tucson has as a requirement in our stormwater ordinance. This is being used more frequently now, and we have clarified what the requirements are for reporting this in order to alleviate illicit discharge incidents. We are increasing tree canopy through this mayor's initiative. And I wanted to just also talk about some general information about floodplain for those people that are here learning about floodplain management. And that is that there's two types of floodplain zones in the city of Tucson. The picture on the right is not a flood zone. That's a map or weather information on the intensity of the rain hitting this Tucson area during a storm event. But there are FEMA and local floodplain maps. You can find that at the city of Tucson, Map Tucson. If you go to Map Tucson and open up the blue button that says I want to, choose city flood data, you can bring up flood information on the city of Tucson, Map Tucson. Local jurisdictional flood areas are identified for some areas. And we also have center lines for water courses identified, as well as all the FEMA flood data. The FEMA flood data includes not, we'll go on to the next one, but includes all these different zones. We also have all these other medium risk flood zones. I wanted to identify that there is new funding available to update our maps in the low to medium risk areas and D zones. This information is important to Tucson Airport Authority because this provides an opportunity to map the Tucson Airport area for floodplain. Right now it's considered a D zone. And so flood insurance in D zones usually take a more restrictive flood insurance requirement for buildings. So if the Tucson Airport Authority, Victor, if you wanted to talk to me more about that, we can talk more. And this information just came out at this Arizona flood conference last week. I just want to touch back on one more item. So, you guys probably read that at the bottom. We'll just go ahead. All right. So, right now we're looking at identifying items to be prioritized and adding new items. The items we identified earlier in the presentation, I don't think that there's any issues with that. What we said. The majority of, if not all of the items that we were reviewing, we considered them to be continued. If anybody has a problem with that, let us know. We're going to go ahead and continue this 11 by 17 list on pages 54 through 56 of the report. I'm going to jump back to see if there's any questions on that. Look like it. All right. So we are also looking at updating our FIS regarding changes to manning values in the Santa Cruz River. This was a trigger by Pima County Regional Flood Control District. And I was wondering if there's anybody interested that wants to work with the city on that to discuss that with the county. We anticipate maybe STAC getting involved with that. John, do you have any problem with that?
No, I guess I'm volunteering then. A stack. Yeah, the other fellow was Corey Thompson
Oh, okay,
Right.
yeah, that's right.
on staff that participated. I think there was 2 that had to recuse themselves because of that particular project. Eric Shep at Flood Control and Larry
John Oliver,
John Oliver.
Yeah.
Larry Roberts, I thought too.
right. So the STAC committee, this Stormwater Technical Advisory Committee, the members will recuse themselves if they're involved with the project that's being reviewed for consideration. Also, Watershed Integrity. This came up a while back. We've been continuing with this. I don't know if we're going to add this as an action item. Does anybody have a problem with us adding this? Essentially, it's talking about making sure that when we're looking at watershed projects, we're asking them to verify if those watershed boundaries are being maintained or if there's areas that might be being breached. The other thing is road projects need to be reviewed to make sure they're identifying potential or existing breach issues. So when you look at the map Tucson, I'll just briefly show you how that's done. So when you go to the city of Tucson, map Tucson, you can click on the I want to button, open. Scroll down to the left, says city flood data, open. And it'll go to a location. It always starts at this one location. This area was chosen because it gives a good variety of the types of entities that are shown for floodplain information on our map. Aqua blue colors and gray colors are Fema zones. This old red hatched zone here is an older city of Tucson flood hazard area. And these pink hatching areas with the blue cross sections, those are newer studies. Those are local floodplain hazard areas, and water surface elevations have been identified. We also have yellow dots. Those are discharge or 100-year flow rate values. And the 100-year flow rate value, we also see that the topo can turn on as well. I'm going to go ahead and show you. So the draft Q at this location is 283 cubic feet per second. Draft means that it is identified as the 100-year floodplain. However, the draft essentially means that contributing area factor has not been added. So this Q is an acceptable number. It just doesn't have contributing area factor. As a reminder, the Tucson Stormwater Management Study requires us to use conservative Qs because the intent of that study was to look at future build out to make sure that we use conservative values to reduce flooding issues. And I brought you to the website to identify how we can look at watershed boundaries.
Elizabeth?
Yes?
Supposedly people can't see this.
Oh. Okay, let me see if we can make sure you can see this. The way it kind of sits on Claire. That does it. And you know it would have had something up top, right?
No, I think you're sharing.
Can you guys see it now?
Social, can you see the screen?
The map?
Yeah, with all of the elevations and stuff. There's a lot of squiggly lines all over it.
Yeah. Map Tucson?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn off some of this. So I'm gonna turn off some of these things so it's easier to see. Let's see, is this turning off? Watersheds. So when we look at this map, if you click in an area, this particular one here identifies Tucson Arroyo watershed. Currently, it shows status as non. That actually has been updated. Our GIS map has to be updated to reflect balanced. Currently, the city of Tucson has no non-designated watersheds. As of the update in 2020, I believe the effective date was in January of 2021. Watersheds are now either critical basin management areas or balanced basin management areas. We understand that the county regional flood control district for unincorporated county area, they're considering changing the nomenclature for balanced and critical due to the term critical being in conflict with the FEMA use of the word critical facility. Even balanced basin management areas might have critical facilities, and we're trying to avoid that misunderstanding. The city of Tucson is also looking at updating the naming for these watersheds to reflect similar concept. So as you can see, the highlighted blue area shows the limits of that watershed. And then you can click on another one and you can see that it highlights that watershed. So where there's issues could be that if there was construction, let's say in this location here, we'd have to work with Adot, it sounds like too, because this looks like maybe, is this Adot right away here? It looks like it is. But we would look at how we can maintain that watershed. So if somebody said, well, we're gonna dump water from here over to here, well, that is not allowed because this watershed has to maintain that flow. So that's just a brief overview of that concept. So that was where we were going with that particular item. So that was about watershed integrity. So this line item, we're gonna probably add to the action items. Unless there's anybody that has an issue with that, please email us or send information in the chat if you have any other thoughts on this item. The repairing floodplain. The repairing floodplain right now is having difficulties with our homeless activity. And so I'd like to talk about that more during our homeless discussion later in the meeting. Erosion hazards are occurring in some areas due to the homeless, and we'll talk about that as well. We've already talked about the erosion hazard setback requirement update. Watercourse maintenance, that's becoming a high ticket item for the city of Tucson, Department of Transportation, streets maintenance guys, and I would guess it's also difficult for the Parks and Recs maintenance crew with homeless activities that we're gonna talk about later. You can read the Stormwater Ordinance annual report, which is on the City of Tucson Stormwater Management website, and learn more about our watercourse maintenance issues with regards to homeless in that annual report from 2021. I'll put the link into the chat later. Does anybody have any more items pertaining to the floodplain management plan? We're gonna look at doing another floodplain management plan update. We're thinking about doing it early 2023 and then have maybe one for late 2023 or keep it in the springtime. We're several months behind this year for our floodplain management plan annual report due to a series of audits that we're going through right now. And the city of Tucson had our ADQ audit right after we got our brand new permit issued. So that was kind of a trick. And then we also had our 5-year hazard mitigation plan, the multi-jurisdictional report that we're working on. We also were in the FEMA 5-year recertification update, and that's ongoing. And then we also have the state ADWR audit that is also a 5-year audit, and that was occurring also early this year. And that primarily goes over floodplain permitting requirements and ensuring the city is addressing our and following our codes. Does anybody have any questions, or does anybody oppose adding the item on watershed integrity to the floodplain management plan? If we have nobody objecting, we'll go ahead and do that. And I'll ask that maybe we pick February or March of 2023 to do the next floodplain management plan. Does anybody here have an objection to that? Okay, so Terry, can you write that down? March 2023 is our next annual floodplain management plan update.
Can I have a question?
yes.
So what are we doing right now as far as watershed integrity? How is that being handled?
So like we talked about in the previous slide, we were supposed to maintain watershed boundaries. So if there's a watershed breach per the regulations, people need to identify that and let the city engineer know immediately. That's what the code, the regulation said. It says, let the city engineer know immediately if a watershed breach is seen. So we can research it to see what the issues are. Do you have something you want to talk to us about?
No,
later?
I'm just, when I'm thinking about some of our airport property that has certain watersheds. I don't know if they're, I know that we have mapping on them, but are they, it's pretty flat ground all the way, through our property that I don't know there's a distinction between Hughes watershed and, it's hard to see, and so I'm kind of wondering how you guys are able to know what that boundary is besides looking at a GIS map. How would someone in the field look at that boundary or know that that boundary exists?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, so I'm looking at this airport right now. Oh, this is Davis Fontaine though. I might looking at the wrong one.
So we have the Hughes wash and we have we have 2 or 3 different watersheds there. But if you were to go out there, you couldn't really tell with a visible eye that something's been breached or not. So we have tools that allow us to see the watersheds on a map, but when you're out there, how could we identify watershed boundaries? Because pretty much it's flat.
Right, so you could use the map to identify features and then go out there to kind of get a general idea of where the water's flowing. In some cases, the watershed boundary does have a little bit of flexibility. If it's still kind of following the same pattern, you might have a little bit of area that's probably contributing that wasn't added to that watershed or some other features. But if it's causing adverse impact, that can be a problem. And if you would like the city of Tucson to assist you with that, we can look at doing that. I had a question for Tucson Airport Authority. Did you guys have a study ongoing right now, or was that Davis Monton that came to us a couple of years ago saying they were working on an update?
So we do have the ACE project, which is the Airfield Safety Enhancement Program, that us and Pima County, and I believe on the line, we have a city official that's reviewing it. I think we're pretty close to, agreeing, in principle with the Pima County, Eric Shep, and the city of Tucson, I believe is, and I think what it is they're going to issue a floodplain use permit just for the formality, as long as it doesn't create a precedent, as far as future development that happens at Tucson Airport. And so, and part of that is redefining some of the airfield infields, because we're putting in another commercial runway. So, it does affect some of the floodplain runoff.
So who are you working with at the city? Fred Felix would probably be involved.
Now, I want to say, if you put up your thing, I can.
Pardon me?
You put up the people in the.
Oh.
Stephen Blood?
What's that?
Stephen Blood?
Stephen Blood. There
Oh,
you go.
Stephen? Okay,
Yeah, Stephen's been helping us. Yeah, he's been great to work with, so.
excellent. Yeah, so, Stephen could help you with
On the
that.
line? Steve, has that been formalized that, I know that you've been talking with Adam Hardy of WSP, but has that been formalized, the route we're going with a floodplain use permit?
Not yet. We're contacting him. I was
Still
waiting
talking
for
details?
some documentation from him. But yeah, I mean, it's getting close.
You think, Steve?
Yeah, so it looks like Tucson and Pima County unincorporated overlap portions. of
Yeah, so
their-
we got a few different jurisdictional
Yeah.
issues that we have to deal with, and the reason I'm asking is because as we do economic development, to the north, where you see a lot of that riparian area, we are, we will have to take a look at some of these watersheds that we are, between Hughes Wash and Airport Wash, that will be affected. But when I go out there, I guess I can't tell the difference between watershed boundaries. So I'm like, how do you guys do it?
Well, let's just click an area right here. This shows us that this is Airport Wash.
Yeah, that's Hughes Wash right next to it to the
Yeah.
south.
So it kind of runs somewhere in here.
But if you were to go out there, it's flat.
Right.
So you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And that's kind of like when you brought this up about boundaries, I was kind of wondering if you're not an expert in it, how would you know there's a breach or maintaining boundaries, because you just
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to tell.
Well, if you had a large amount of water leaving one watershed and going to another, you could be causing huge flooding issues for that downstream watershed. So in this case, you can see these larger FEMA floodplains are running through that Airport Wash area over here. If you had something that was breaching out, somehow getting over to these smaller tributary flow lines, that could be a serious problem.
Well, just for an example of what you're talking about, so why don't you bring it back over here?
Yeah, you can look at it.
See this line right here? We have economic development that's right on that. So when we start discussing, how we're gonna drain that apron or, you know what I mean, that hangar, it's right on that boundary.
Yeah.
You can't tell if that's actually the line or not, what I mean?
Yeah, well, if you were sitting here, your engineer would split flow, let's say the roof line.
I think we're doing that.
Yeah,
But.
and that would meet the requirements.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, your engineer should be using the floodplain limit, the floodplain limits plus the watershed boundary to do the design.
Oh, staff has to, do it, so like Steve would have to do this.
Okay, we're gonna move to next part here. Stormwater workshop. The stormwater management action items for 21-22. Like I said, we worked on corrective action plan procedures, reporting. And Angel, was there anything else that we wanted to identify as things that are kind of somewhat new? And then our outreach topics of interest, I think we've got some slides on that, but one of the items that we like to share with the folks while we have attention to some people is the concern of sedimentation and sediment transport. That is a normal function of our floodplains, but when you have excess sedimentation, or if you have erosion that's abnormal, you're going to have additional sediment that can cause issues, such as buildup of sediment downstream that takes away from the conveyance of the downstream channels. And when that sediment or abnormal amount of sediment moves downstream from, like in this case, that photo shows how I don't know if you can see this, but there's a crack right here in that building, and the folks were trying to fix it by putting in what they call the drainage improvement, and they were going to build out like this and put a big concrete protection to help this building pad. This is a non-conforming structure, obviously, but it didn't have the correct erosion and setback. And so we explained to them, you need to submit a drainage report, because if they ended up putting it in this structure, it could also block flow if it wasn't designed right. So the in this case, we were out there during the time when they had bladed that embankment. And that's another issue when you're taking embankment vegetation, it makes the soil looser and also increases the sediment erosion, and can cause hazard to not only the building but downstream properties. Like I said, when that sediment builds up downstream, the channel gets too full of sediment and can't hold the floodwaters, and then the flooding occurs and overtops. So another outreach topic of interest, Angel, did you want to point out a couple of outreach topics of interest, like keeping your dumpster lids closed, things like that?
But we have photos, but I don't know how we can share them.
Oh, do you have it on the S drive?
It's on the OneNote.
Pardon me?
The OneNote.
Oh, okay. So is that homeless related though, mostly, or?
It's all stormwater.
Okay. So we'll open up those. I'm trying to think of what other outreach.
So why is it to keep the dumpster lids closed?
Okay. So some of the issues that we see are dumpster diving.
Oh,
And so we have stuff coming out and then just laying all over the place. But primarily the issue is when you have water going into the tops of dumpsters, invariably you're going to need to drain it. And when you're draining that, out comes stuff you don't want in the storm drain system. So as a reminder to everybody, everywhere in the city of Tucson essentially is part of the storm drain system, because in the city we allow the flow to continue. We're unlike, let's say, places in Phoenix where they do 100% retention on site. So flows on a parcel are kept on site. And so flows don't go anywhere. They need to perk it in Phoenix because they don't have the fall that city of Tucson has. We have changes in grade a little bit more because we have harder soils. Those harder soils also equate to issues with infiltration. So when we have a dumpster, the lid is off, there's the issue of getting that water in there and then somebody draining it. Other issues with dumpsters we're going to talk about in a little bit.
But I'm gonna also mention that we also have issues with people not picking up their waste. And so we've included our handy dandy little stormwater baggie. You can clip it to your wherever fanny pack and take your doggy bag out and put your dog poop in there and then throw it out in the trash. And those of you who are attending in real life, you are gonna leave here today with your option of a little doggy bag, or there's some also stormwater management sunglasses and other little goodies.
Those are my boots when I go to stormwater.
We're gonna now go into what Adot is waiting to hear about. We're gonna talk about our special stormwater retrofit projects. Let's see, I think I've got a slide on that. So the city of Tucson receives a permit from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And if this periodic permit gets updated, we recently got our update, and in the permit requirements, we're looking at evaluating 3 areas that contribute to stormwater quality issues and the exceedance of the analyte that we're testing for within the MS4. Again, the MS4, that is our storm drain system that is separate from the sanitary system. In other places in the nation, the sanitary system and the storm drain system are connected. In the city of Tucson, it is a separate system. And this system is has to be kept as clean as possible. That's why we have our Only Rain in a Drain logo for the stormwater management program. And so what we're looking at are 3 areas that we can identify and get samples, check to see if our projects can reduce exceedances or certain analyte that we're concerned about. We do have 3 projects identified, and I don't know if I should go into that or just show you. I guess I need to go and show you. It's on our S drive here. We're just looking up the document here. Oh, here it is. So we're gonna open up the City of Tucson stormwater report, which talks about different procedures and things within the City of Tucson.
So did it say you needed to identify residential, industrial, and commercial, 3 separate like representative sample sites? Is that what it's looking at?
Yeah, and I think the ones we're gonna choose have some overlapping. So we get this a little bit more legible. So we have 3 projects. The first one is a student housing retrofitting associated development regulatory assessment. This particular item looks at an area actually within West University watershed. This is on the downstream side of the University of Arizona, where we have large student housing structures that are being constructed. Some of the structures are not compliant with stormwater code, and so we're working with them to do retrofitting to fix these issues. Some of the projects actually are going into compliance as we speak. So we're assessing right now. We do have some sampling data from a few years ago, and this was testing E. coli and some other analytes. And then we're going to also be thinking about adding some other analytes to that assessment, maybe, depending on if the data that we got previously for the lab from the lab includes some of those analytes or not. And so part of the issue with the student housing area was that, like I mentioned, stormwater compliance, and there was a lot of concerns for the neighborhood, the residential neighborhood, and downstream of this area. They were concerned that the words black sludge came up. And yet it was the Pima County Sanitary Sewer Outfall Management Group in the county. The administrator or manager of that group, actually, she lives in this area, and she said, no, there's never been black sludge. And the inspectors have gone out there and we've never seen black sludge, but there is a gray sheen or gray staining that you can see on the curb line at the intersection of like Euclid and First. And we've also seen that, I've seen in many spillways, as well as other curb lines, let's say on the south side of the university campus. You'll see that along 6th Avenue curb line in some locations. The gutter line that has ponding or carries flows and the cars are going by, the water gets flushed underneath these car carriages, vehicle, and that stuff can drop out into the water and then get splashed up onto the curb line. That's one of our theories. We're looking at that particular item, and we're also looking at other analytes to see where we can lower these problematic, if there's, we've identified things in the water that has to be cleaned up. So far, the things that were seen in previous testing were higher than normal levels of chlorine. That's yet another issue in the student housing area. Some of the structures did not connect the jacuzzis correctly, so we're asking them to make sure that it's correctly fixed. We also have an issue with dog walking. So it was identified that at the top of at least one of these student housing buildings, inspectors have seen people bring their dogs up to the roof to do their business. That is not an allocated area for the doggy activity. And so there are identified areas that these student housing buildings were given. They were told to go, let's say, across the street, there's a big yard. They've been given permission to go out there, do their business, and I think they're supposed to pick it up and trash it themselves, or maybe there's somebody that's on site that does that for them, I don't know. But there's an allocated area, and so when they don't follow that procedure, they go to the roof, that goes directly down into the storm drain system and down the street. So people don't want to have that, right? So that's one other item for the student housing. We have multiple items that are listed. The document that you can see here, where's my mouse? This talks about it a little bit more. And you can see it's identifying some of the issues about trash containers and other items. So these are going to be looked at for this particular project. As a little side note, another stormwater outreach opportunity here, condensation discharges are actually illegal per the International Residential Code. So condensation needs to be kept on site at the parcel site. The second project is working on seeing how we can reduce E. coli in our watercourse areas from homeless activity. And I think at this point I'm gonna, I'll move on, but we are gonna talk about some of the issues related to this in our photo section. But you can see there's some considerations for, we're looking at adding some testing. There's new testing methods at the labs now. We're working with the University of Arizona. We have a PhD candidate that is working with the city of Tucson, helping us look at how to scope the project. There's also a concern with, the homeless are involved with drug use. So if drugs can be tested, we might be doing that if it's not overly costly. The pesticides for treating lice. These certain types of pesticides, we found these in our box culverts, and those are linked to some cancer-causing chemicals. So this is a extremely important concern to the city of Tucson for water quality. And then our third project is a joint effort with Adot. At this time, we actually have decided to go with one of these two projects. There was two joint effort projects. One was with Pima County, and they've gone ahead and let us know they're backing out on their project right now. But the Adot project, this was brought to our attention by Adot to look at how we can improve our illicit discharge issues at the boundary of where Adot right away and the city of Tucson meet. And so why this is important is primarily for developing procedures and ways of protocol to be set up to communicate between the two entities during an illicit discharge incident. And so we've asked Adot to partner with us on the project. They had initially talked about it, and we've decided to move forward on it, and they are continuing to work with us on it, and we want to do that with them. David is from our South Tucson office, Adot office, isn't that right?
I'm statewide.
Oh, you're
Technically, I'm out of
state.
Phoenix,
Oh, you're out of Phoenix,
but I live here.
but you live here. Okay, I'll get it straight one of these days. So, yeah, we're working with David and Eileen over in Adot on this particular project. David, did you want to add anything to this? So I think one of, some of the types of parameters or analytes that we may be testing for will likely include E. coli, but those particular parameters haven't been identified. Adot has to work with the city to see what they'd like to see as those chosen analytes to reduce. So we wanted to go over that today. And gonna go back to. Keep going. So, to backtrack on this, so Brooke, you were asking about how do they represent the different area of land use? So the first one, the student housing, that's a residential / commercial and residential issue. And then our, the second one with the homeless, that crosses all of those land use areas. And then the Adot one, is Adot considered a particular type of land use? I don't even know. Do you guys even have a designation for your land?
It'd just be transportation.
Transportation.
Is it a transportation land use? Okay. So it'll be crossing multiple land uses within the city into the transportation land use areas. Thank you for the caller to clarify. So this just talks about that we have information on floodplain and erosion. And we have, like we can see here, we have LOMAR data that shows updated flood mapping. We have local and FEMA floodplain. We have subdivision mapping information that might identify drainage easements. We have our FIS data, that's a report issued by FEMA that provides us with water surface elevation, flow rates, and historical data. And we can help with other information such as elevation certificates. City of Tucson offices offer services to check your flood status. You can get this information online at City of Tucson floodplain information. If you enter those words in the Google search, you should be able to find PDSD's website with floodplain information. Currently, the flood insurance is changing due to current Congress updates, but the elevation certificates can still be used to assist with improving flood insurance status. And you can also get your elevation certificate requests from City of Tucson. It says. And then I'm going to talk a little bit before we get into the homeless section. Time are we on? 15 minutes. Okay. Oh no, we're beyond. Are we?
You got 15 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, 15 minutes. Just I wanted to go over this because this was important to discuss water conservation. I'm going to jump over to this section and go back. So the city manager advised mayor and council to declare tier 2 status for drought planning purposes when Lake Mead falls below 1,045 feet above sea level. Currently, we're in tier 1, and tier 1 is on the left of this slide here, and it talks about measures being implemented because we're in a tier 1. When Lake Mead is dropping in the capacity of the water that's in there, the city of Tucson, actually, I believe it's Tucson Water leading this, has a plan in place. It's a drought planning document, and it talks about how we're dealing with restricted water availability. And so there can be implemented audits and then certain conservation programs for outreach and other information. This can lead to restricted water use and extra surcharges. This information was obtained at the Tucson Association of Realtors water panel that occurred yesterday. And there were some great speakers there, and I'm not trying to include myself, even though I was there. But there were the other speakers were really informative about what was going on. And so I highly recommend you looking at the City of Tucson water website and look up drought preparedness. I'm gonna go back a little bit here. So what can we do to conserve? We want to assess, manage our use. Think about what we can do to upgrade to more efficient appliances. There's other tips. But one of the things to think about also is water quality. When we have clean surface water, that means there's more allotment for clean groundwater. So please remember, it's only rain in the drain. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the on-site use of cisterns isn't as active as I am hoping it would be. There are people that are getting more and more into using cisterns. We're hoping this can continue. This is a great use of our gray water or rainwater that can be used for your gardens, washing car or whatever, instead of using our precious white water or well water. I'm going to go ahead and jump down here. We have information on post-fire conditions. And please keep in mind that if there is a fire, there is a 30-day waiting period that could be exempt. But the wildfire has to be in full containment before the flood insurance policy can go into effect. There's a really cool website that shows the CDO debris flow. I'd look at this right now, but we're running late. I'd like to spend some time on our water course homeless issue. There's also a good website about flood insurance there. There's some other resources. And the question is, will we head into a deeper drought condition or will we have a rainy season? And the answer is we don't know. And I'd like to identify also, we do have our first annual, call it the Stormwater workshop / floodplain management plan champion. And that is Bob Lindrud. He lives in the Alamo Wash area, and he goes out to that wash and picks up trash in the Alamo Wash. This type of activity has helped the neighborhood because it ends up encouraging others to go out there and do the same thing. And right now, this section of the Alamo Wash does not have any homeless activity. The people in the neighborhood have taken over the wash in that they use it for recreational purposes that are compliant with our stormwater and floodplain codes. We'd like to thank him for his inspiration. And so we're going to now go to our section on stormwater management and floodplain regulatory issues in our water courses. And did you say it was in OneDrive?
I have it in OneDrive.
So how do I get there? Do you email it to me? Or how do I do that? Anybody?
You should be able to go to your folders and there should be a listing for OneDrive.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see one.
This is Apple and it's complicated.
Did you save it on the S drive?
I can't send it over just to the OneDrive. That's all it allows me to. Guess we gotta cord in the USB maybe.
Okay, so. Bear with us.
Now go to the three dots.
OneNote?
Mhm.
OneNote?
Then you have to find his OneNote.
All right, so I'd like to ask if our attendees from TPD would like to share their screen on the meeting if I give up my sharing rights here. Can you do that? I'm talking to Preston Hold or some of the guys
Yeah,
at
let me just,
TPD.
I sent you an email with the Word document with some photos in it. I can see if I can do it here.
Okay, I'm gonna look as well.
The Outlook.
Why can't I just log in? That's not it.
You don't have it bookmarked, your Outlook?
I know, it's.
Elizabeth, I'm gonna have to just send it via the chat, the photos.
Okay, I can see, okay, yeah, that helps, we can see that. Let me share this screen if I can get back. Hold on one moment and we'll share. Go ahead. Okay, we're gonna share some photos. Okay, Preston, can you talk about this?
Sorry, you seen the Word document then?
We see three guys in white suits with some,
All right, so that's through the chat. Okay. So that was a recent body recovery we had about 3 weeks ago. Within that wash is about a 4-inch tube right there around Adot and City of Tucson. That's off of St. Mary's and I-10. That was a body recovery from a possible homicide. So in there was all this trash and debris that we had to recover out of that, which would normally be in the storm drains heading into the Santa Cruz River wash. So that's just one of thousands of photos and locations throughout the city. I mean, this is just the few observations that I'm out on. Also, when you're talking about E. coli, there's feces being dumped in the washes, and here's a photo, and it's not just like small quantities. It's like 5-gallon buckets, large plastic bags, unaccounted for, not regulated, not being monitored or cleaned up at all. We also get waterways with the blankets and debris clogging these storm drains with a potential of flooding out areas within the community. From an environmental standpoint, all this goes somewhere. We're not collecting it, we're not picking it up, and the volume and mass of this is huge.
do you have a photo of that, that slope embankment that you sent me the other day on the St. Mary's
And then,
with the fire?
all right, so there's an example of a grocery bag filled with feces. This is a reoccurring, ongoing. I'll send you. I'll add that erosion problems. And then we also have water diversions down inside the washes. So they're making their embankments and their hideouts, places where they're camping, and they're redirecting the flow. That's diverting the water from one, route to another. That's a pretty reoccurring common thing. The fires that we see on a regular basis are down inside these washes and tunnels, causing potential damages to the infrastructure of the concrete. This also poses a risk for the vegetation, the embankments, the erosion, the roots that are holding the banks together in these high risk flood areas that have a significant flow of, like, anywhere from 2 inches of water all the way up to 10, 12, 15, 20 feet in some washes that we currently go through. Within those washes, we lose that root ball and that embankment integrity. And then I have a photo coming up here of how the floods are now encroaching on people's properties and businesses. With that, there's also environmental hazards surrounding, like the needles, hypodermic needles that are coming down into the wash, medications, stuff that would normally end up in a landfill if it was properly disposed of. But the volumes of this stuff is, we're having to, in some of the tunnels that we have to access, we're using front end loaders and trucks to have to remove this stuff out. So that's just where we can get equipment into. Some of these areas, it's impossible to get some equipment into. So then it has to be hand, and then it's not even being collected. It's kind of overwhelming. Also comes with it is tampering with monitoring devices. Monitoring devices from USGS. There's a box that I just sent. The people on the street have actually tampered with the box, access the sub panels and electricity, and then using it for computers or phones or whatever have you, or they're just tampering with it just to destroy it, maybe even collect or scrap the materials, the copper within it. And so all this stuff plays into, these are monitoring devices for floods, and if they're being tampered, that's another critical infrastructure. The encampments along these washes are causing substantial fires to the trees that we're planting. And then what photo, are you able to go to the photo that shows the embankment?
Yes. Let's go back to that one.
Right there, there it is. Yeah, so there's propane bottles going down in the streams. Hazardous materials. I mean, TFD has a hazmat truck that goes out for a collision and some motor oil on the ground, understandably, to remove the slick and the potential hazardous materials. They're not coming out to the hazardous materials that are mounding up in our washes and streams and areas that are not suitable for building or constructing.
Hey,
Yeah.
Elizabeth, can I interject here about what happened to me at the gym show?
Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
Darren Meistrans, City of Tucson Stormwater. So, Preston, all this stuff that you're going over is just it's crazy. I got a call from a different department for streets when the gym show was going on, and we had that cold weekend. It was our last cold weekend. It was in the 40s and upper 30s. I got called out because there was smoke coming from a culvert over there on 18th and Osborne. I found the culvert, the smoke was coming out. I looked in the culvert. It's a little 4x4 culvert, and I'm 6'3", so I couldn't really get too much into there. As I was going to take a picture, the fire went out, and I called 911, and I was told by the dispatch that they were told by Tucson Fire that homeless are now able to have warming fires. So I made sure I let everybody know, and I don't know.
Yeah, so Darren,
I'm a
verbal on something like that isn't actually a directive written down. So our floodplain ordinance is very clear, and so is our stormwater ordinance. Those codes say you can't have hazards. There's, aside from zoning codes, I've never gotten that directive, and so We do have conflicting information out there. And I just want to reassure everybody on the meeting that our codes hold. Right now, we're going through state audits and federal audits to assure that we meet our regulations. And those include following regulations in our water courses, no dumping. Since the 50s, the city of Tucson has codes that says you do not dump, you do not put trash in the water courses. So what we've got to do at this point, since we're running out of time, is just to wrap up to say that the city of Tucson Stormwater Management, along with other staff, are going to work toward identifying code that applies to this. And Lori Pumphrey had asked a question in the chat, how do we get compliance in these water courses? And that's just it. I'm going to identify some codes that apply. I'm going to work with some other folks to make sure we got all the codes listed and share this with others so people understand what the regulations are. This type of activity by the homeless contributes to serious problems with surface water quality and our groundwater quality, as well as other aspects of everybody's general welfare and safety. So we're going to look at this and identify this more. We don't want to see the homeless in a flood risk or, in an area where there's a safety concern. And we also don't want to have the impacts from these obstructions and pollutants in our waterways. I'd like to end the meeting now. If anybody's got some burning questions or additional comments here, let's open it up for chat for 1 more minute, and then we can end the meeting. Does anybody have a question? Looks like there's something here from Casey. There's a question about dredging the Pantano Wash near Houghton. I'll have to get back to you on this. You can email City of Tucson at tucsonflooderosioninfo@tucsonaz.gov, Casey, and we can discuss that. And then there's one more question. It looks like.
Yeah.
There's some more photos. So part of the issue we're seeing is, when people use meth, they tend to stockpile a lot of trash.
And Elizabeth, I offer myself to help out if anybody needs to see tours of this or there's an echo going on. Let me turn my stuff down. I apologize. So then I offer my vehicle to take you out. Anybody that's interested in seeing this firsthand, if they want to contribute to this, I can show this an entire day probably of areas of concern throughout my area that I work, and I'm just one of our officers throughout the city. So.
Everybody can email us at stormwater@tucsonaz.gov or t.concerns@tucsonaz.gov to report an issue. I want to thank TPD, Preston Hold, and others, as well as other people on here. We're running out of time. I'll have to answer questions separately after the meeting. And thank you for attending.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
It's up there anymore.
What?
I said, I don't see us up there anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you for attending.
We gotta run it.
If you have questions, you can email us. Thanks.
Hands off, so maybe
Oh.
we're off.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Thank you.
That last one.
Yeah.
Give them a different codes and regulations as we used to want them.
I know.
Elizabeth,
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
can you turn off your share? Try something.
I'm gonna just add this little note in here.
I got updated.
Set up some.
And they go.
Yeah.
Amazing.
You know, give them some encampment. That's where they could live.
You're gonna try and upload your pictures?
Yeah, see if she can.
We'll see if she can see them. Yeah.
Sean.
What do you want me to do?
Nothing.
Yeah, stop the share, so
Should stop
Angel,
it?
Angel's gonna try and upload his
How do I do
pictures.
it now? How do I go?
Yeah, I've got him online. Yeah.
Here? Where do I go to share? Speak.
On the bottom, right, if you moved it up, you want to share your.
Share photos. I'll share
Is that
photos.
right?
Where are your photos? On the screen, right?
Because we were looking at
Hi,
a
nice to meet you in person.
project.
Yeah.
How you doing? Yeah.
Figured it out right away.
Yeah.
You want to share your screen, I don't know why.
WLB?
Yes.
Yeah, why your screen's not coming up.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It's a little- as you-
Yeah, WLB and then yes, Stan's tech.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hello. Because you're on here, right? Yeah, share here. So that's the share.
Yeah, with Karen.
That was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really good.
Then I go to file.
Yeah, we worked with. I have worked with
Not working?
Stan Tech on.
But then how do I go
So
to?
the G earlier, G, the manual is.
Yeah.
Initial triple bottom line.
It's on my,
That's on your screen.
Well, it's participating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, you guys did that. I used to work in the river, there's a giant.
Oh,
The stand report.
Oh, yeah.
The
Yeah,
500
that's right.
page
yeah,
Zoom, they use it.
that's right.
It's in
Yeah.
Oh,
I know David Little, well, at the WB office, talking with,
John Choi.
oh, yeah, one
John
note.
Choi,
yeah.
yeah. That is
Um,
right.
One note? Oh, so share for file.
Yeah. It's very, it's important. I like it.
Elizabeth, it's nice to meet you in person briefly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I know. We have a lot of data. It's helped contextualize everything. That's what we're.
Oh, share.
Audit, and
Absolutely.
we gotta make sure we're like, everything is out there. Yes. Yep.
Should be able to get it from your screen.
Trying to combine these two
Yeah.
to get two birds, one stone. There's some of that, water course manual, that water course page.
Okay, yes.
We're just coming back another day. I'm usually here.
Yes, I did see that.
Just
email
have to
about the
get
app,
to
that-
Teams. Yeah, so whenever you have time, I know you guys are super busy too.
But we should make time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how about another lunch?
You will.
That would be great. Okay.
Well, he's there. We'll work it out.
See you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Yeah, let me just finish this and then.
The recorder? You
turned off
the recorder? The recording's still
Oh,
on.
yeah, let's go ahead.
Dismiss, yeah, all you have to hit is dismiss.
Where's that one?
Under more. Over one. There. Stop recording. Down, 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 down. Up one. There you go.
Thanks, everybody.